Hey, welcome back to Mrs. Wizard's Way. And boy, I've got some great advice that anybody who's starting off in life, that's starting adulting, needs to hear. Let's get started. I taught for 26 years, and most of that time I taught in a high school setting. And I saw a lot of kids who I'm like, okay, you're doing okay as a teenager, 18-year-old, under that protective umbrella of their parents, living in their home. But I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you going to make it in the real world? And that really was scary for me. And so, as a school, we teach things with reading and writing, math, but we don't teach life. That's the parent's responsibility. And sometimes parents are not the greatest and they've missed some things. Even the parents that do seem to have their life together miss things that they should have said. Or maybe they never experienced some of the things I'm going to share today. And so they don't have a way to warn their kids. And not that this is an all-inclusive list, but this list are things that I have either experienced myself or I've seen people in my life have gone through some really hard times because they didn't make some of those right choices. So I want to make a video today that you can share with anybody who's graduating high school, getting out of college, maybe just is starting to become an adult in a new way. Maybe they're getting out of a relationship. Maybe they just need to, say, hey, what I've been doing in the past has not been working. I need something different. I need something new. And that's what I'm going to do with today's video. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a Prezi presentation, which means it's like PowerPoint on steroids, but it's kind of fun, and this is what I used to show my kids before I left the classroom, before they graduated. So, Adulting 101. The first thing I always did was I warned them to protect their digits. Yeah, that Social Security number. Don't share that number. There is hardly ever a time you need to be sharing that number with anybody. Employers will need it. Colleges frequently need it. And if you're applying for loans or looking at credit scores, things like that, they will need your Social Security number. You do not need to give Social Security number to most hospitals or doctor's office. A lot of times it's on there, and I'm like, why does it need to be on there? Back in the day, maybe we used that number for tracking, but we don't any longer. They don't need to have access to that number, and just because you give them the number, who's seeing it? Is there a nefarious employee? We've unfortunately heard stories where sometimes the employees or someone else who has access to those offices can do some bad things with numbers and they get them. Okay, so try and protect what you have. If they come back and say, we've got to have it, well, maybe have that conversation with them. Know your numbers. So we know to protect that Social Security number, but the next one is credit score. It's determined by lots of things. Now, I know you guys are probably like, oh, I know we did this in high school. Okay, you might have, but you haven't done the rest. So stay with me because this one is so important. Because when you first start out in life, you don't have a credit score. And so you got to start working on getting one. And there's all sorts of factors that determine it. The best way to start getting a credit score is to, unfortunately, get a credit card, which can be scary if you don't have control over giving it to people to start making purchases. But that's the first step of how to get a credit score. But we got some more worried about that in a little bit. Let's move on. The freshman 10, 15, or even 20? Yeah, typically high school graduates can expect to gain, especially those going to college, 10 or more pounds. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. One is that if you're going to school and you're eating at the cafeteria, they may not always have the best options. They're, producing food for quantity, not quality. And so sometimes what may have been a healthy item may not be after they've done it to make it, serviceable for, instead of your family of 5, serviceable for 50 or 500. Okay, those green beans might have been healthy when they first were cooked, but after they've been in the warmer now for 3 hours, they may have lost some of their nutrients. So that's one. The other is that nobody's telling you to eat those green beans. Mom is not there saying, eat your peas, eat your green beans, eat your veggies. So you've got to be purposeful in what you're putting in your body. So be watchful of that, which can mean going out to eat. So you may have the luxury of going out more than you did when you were still at home. Know your risks in a partnership. This one's a big one. And in a partnership, I mean anytime you and someone else are going in together for maybe what could be money related. Don't don't put all the bills in one person's name. Now, a lot of times the lease will be in everybody that's going to be living there. But utilities and credit cards, be careful who's paying for what and whose name is on each item, because what bills are accrued will be legally owed by the person whose name is on the account, not the person that helped make the bill. So for example, you go home for vacation over Christmas and your roommate or significant other stayed at the house or apartment, and they got really mad at you and they decided, okay, it's 30 degrees outside. I'm a little hot. Let's open the windows. Oh, I'm cold now. Let's turn on the heater. Let's leave the heater on with the windows open for the next week. Yeah. So the heater's going to be running on nonstop, nonstop, nonstop. And who's going to be in charge of that bill? Well, whoever's name is on that electric bill or the gas bill, whichever is powering it. And so if that was you, the person that went home, you're going to have a heck of a bill, and there's not much that you're going to be able to refute with the billing company, because literally you were burning through all that electric or gas. Debt, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. You got that credit card, okay? Now, so just because you get a credit card, maybe a $3,000 limit, doesn't mean that's a score you should be reaching, okay? Make sure that if you do get that credit card, pay it off. Put something small on it. Maybe go to Starbucks once a month, once a week, something, and pay it off right away. That's how you build that score up. I have a little bit of debt on it and I pay it off right away. Little bit of debt and I pay it off right away. That's how you build it up. If you were to build it up to the 3,000 mark, well, you can't pay that off right away. And that actually hurts your credit, because they're going to say, well, how much credit do you have? Well, I have 3,000. I've used all of it. It's gone. And they're going to say, well, you have nothing available. Bing, that hurts the credit score. If you have a little bit on there, they say, how much is still available? I've got all this left over still. Oh, you're using it wisely. But if you do reach that, get a whole bunch on that credit card, if you make just a minimum payment, it will probably take you about 20 years to pay it off. That used to be a typical house mortgage. Just because you can doesn't mean you have to. You don't have to take up smoking and vaping when you turn 18, and you don't have to spend your entire paycheck on lotto tickets. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you have to. I'm not saying that any of those items are inherently horrible, but they are ways to spend a lot of money and not get a lot back for you personally. Small things never stay that way. Small things start off cute, but they lose that cuteness like babies and pets and debt. So don't rush into anything that can have a long-term commitment. How many times have you known someone who got a pet and then they couldn't take care of it, and then they're having to search for, who's going to take care of my dog? I need someone to take this dog or this cat or this parrot, okay? And some of them have a short lifespan. It's not hard for a goldfish. They don't live terribly long, usually a couple years. But you were all into getting that macaw parrot. Good Lord, they can live to 120 years old. So be careful. You have to will that animal to somebody, okay? So be careful of that long-term commitment. Don't burn too many bridges with your family, okay? Some bridges need to be burned. I'm not going to deny that. There are some families that are not the most healthy. I fully understand that. And sometimes family can be your friends, the people you care the most for. Who's going to be the person that if you get into trouble, you are working the night shift, you get off at midnight, and you get out to your car and someone has slashed all four of them. You have one spare. That's not going to help you, is it? Who's going to be able to come and help you at that time? Okay? Those are the bridges you don't want to burn. Take your Flintstones. Take care of yourself. When it comes down to it, all you really have in life is your health and your faith, if you believe. Online you and the real you are the same thing. People have been known to have been fired just from what they have posted. And to be honest, when I was still teaching and there would be somebody who was applying for a position in my department, you bet I looked them up. I do a Google search on their name. I try and find them on Facebook. What are they posting? Because the paper they gave me of their resume only says what they want me to know. But their social media says a whole lot more. So be careful with what you're posting out there. And so if you post, hey, I'm going to the concert tomorrow, okay, and then you try and call in the next day after, your boss is going to see that and know that you've lied. Go to school or get a trade. What you are now will most likely not be enough for you to live on, and especially in the future when you get a family. Look at the future of that job. What will they offer? Is that going to be enough, to pay for the end? What is the top pay scale? When I was teaching, I had a lot of kids who worked at a car wash, which was a good job for kids. But I'm like, hey, do you know any 30-year-olds that work there? And they're like, oh, yeah, we know the 30-year-olds. I said, okay, so what are you doing not to be that 30-year-old still working at the car wash? One of the reasons I say find a job, go to school, do something, have a plan, is I had a student, 4.0 student, great kid, went through a very accelerated program that I was part of teaching, went to one of my colleagues after graduation. He had walked across the stage, valedictorian, 4.0. And his parents went up to my colleague and said, okay, so now what do we do? You haven't been applying to college? You've not been applying for scholarships? You've not filled out your FAFSA. Oh, we failed this child. Now, he was not in my program that I oversaw directly. He was in a classes I taught as a sequence, but not the ones that I would give this presentation to. And I felt bad. I was like, how did we fail this child? He should have been making all these applications and things because he would have definitely qualified for good scholarships and a good placement. You're going to change a lot in the next couple of years. Things that you can't live without now will most likely mean very little to you in a couple of years. Think back to what was really big when you were in middle school. How many of you had a fidget spinner? Where is it? Exactly. You probably sent it to Goodwill, maybe the trash. Just thinking, 1,000 years they're going to dig those fidget spinners up and they're like, what did they do with these? What was the meaning of these? That'll be great. The biggest difference now is that you're an adult and the decisions you make now can last a lifetime. So do be careful with what you are doing. As a minor, if you are the person just getting out of high school as a minor, that wasn't just but a few days ago probably, you were still 17, they might have said, oh, tisk tisk, don't do that again. But now, if there's something that you've done that you've broken the law, it's definitely, you're in a different ball game, you're in a different court, and they don't play around always. Too much of any one thing can be bad. So don't get lost in just one thing. That can be video games or just being online, work, food, partying. You can lose sight of what you really want your life to turn into. So be careful with what you're doing with your life and how you're spending your time. Have a plan. Make some goals. Try and reach them. But don't beat yourself up if you fall short. Work and work hard. Now, this next slide is going to, shock you. So, if you're not seated and hanging on, get ready. Your generation, not you, of course, but your generation is lazy. I know you're shocked. So, if you want to prove that you can have the job, don't be that person. My dad told me something a long time ago. He said, make sure that you're doing your job the best you can, because if it comes down to you and somebody else who has to get the axe, they need to make a cut, who are they going to cut? Make sure that you're not the one that they're going to cut. Make sure that you do things that company values, so they will say, is it going to be her or is it going to be him? Okay? So make sure that you're doing your job to the best of your ability. They are paying you after all. Don't rely on your parents to take care of you forever. Strive to be an independent person. You can't be an adult until you start acting like one, and living in your parents' basement at 30 is definitely not it. Celebrate the milestones. You only get so many special events in your life, like birthdays and weddings and events and awards. Celebrate them with the people that you love. Responsibly. With all that together, we've got Adulting 101 down. So hopefully that'll give you some ideas, some thoughts to keep you going, get you started in life, get you maybe thinking, how am I going to plan this life? Because you get just one really good chance a lot of times on, did I make that right decision? Because we see the news. We see those kids who make horrible decisions and you're like, wow, they just destroyed their entire life. Now, it doesn't mean that following this is going to make everything perfect and sunshine and roses. That's not the way it is. Hey, and if you haven't shared my video, I really encourage you to do so. I find that my goal is to still help people, and I can't do that in the classroom anymore, but I can sure do it on YouTube. So glad you were with me today. See ya.